Okay, I did my presentation on Baron Frederick von Steuben's training of the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War. So von Steuben's background and entrance into America was he is from Russia, but he lived most of his life in Germany, and he was an officer in the Prussian military and became member of the General Staff after the Seven Years' War. He was given assignment with Frederick the Great's headquarters after the Seven Years' War, and he worked there till 1763, till he was discharged from the army as a captain due to his tarnished reputation of being a homosexual. After this, he was seeking employment in Europe, but they were not looking to hire anyone because they were at a time of peace. So he was struggling financially, and he went to Paris, and he actually met Benjamin Franklin in 1777. Benjamin Franklin vouched for him to George Washington, saying that he was very professionally trained and knew what he was doing, and kind of exaggerated some of his credentials, saying that he worked directly with Frederick the Great, which was not the case. But George Washington was struggling in the war at the time, and they were getting their butt kicked by the British. So he hired von Steuben to train the American troops. So von Steuben is responsible for the birth of the American Army training manual. Von Steuben could not really speak English too well, so he had Alexander Hamilton and Nathaniel Greene help him to translate to English to write the manual. The manual consisted of basic hygiene for the troops, proper dress code, 8-count firelock motion, which was a way to efficiently maneuver their firearms and fire organized shot at the enemy in an efficient amount of time. It taught them shooting in ranks, and then it also taught them moving tactics and camp sanitation. At the time, General Washington had an outbreak in his camp of smallpox, and it was because their camps were just not sanitary and they were just not taught proper sanitation techniques, like putting latrines downhill of their camp and not putting latrines right next to where they cook and so on. So this was also called the Blue Book. The Blue Book was titled Regulations for the Order and Discipline of the Troops of the United States. It was developed at Valley Forge and it's still used till this day. It trained, von Steuben actually used this manual to train 100 troops in a model company, and then those troops broke off and trained their own brigades with this Blue Book. So proof of von Steuben's training was effective was during the Battle of Monmouth. During the Battle of Monmouth, General Lee was engaged with the British in a skirmish. However, he was outnumbered, so he retreated. George Washington was moving up with his army as well, and he saw General Lee retreating, and he actually fired him and removed him from his duties. And he actually encouraged the troops to actually engage back into battle with the British. The British, since they were kicking their butt years prior till this battle, they were right on top of them, and they did not expect the American troops to be very trained with the bayonet combat, which they were actually improved upon like a lot with von Steuben. So since the bayonet combat was much more effective now, they pushed the British troops back, and they established a area for artillery lines to be set up, which then fired volleys of shot, which pushed the British back even further. And then American firing lines were then established, and they held up against the British and forced them to withdraw from the battle eventually. So post-battle, von Steuben's training manual is still used till this day. This battle set the tone for the rest of the war. Training of the troops prepared them for the battle, and it gave them the confidence they needed to stand toe-to-toe with professionally trained British soldiers. And the American Army now held a strategic position in the Revolution. So the results of training were a direct effect of this victory. Troops were organized and well prepared for combat. The military tactics of engagement were now understood by the soldiers, and it gave the troops a sense of professionalism as a professional soldier. And order and organization was now established in the ranks of the army, like officers, generals, that was now established. and the training directly affected the outcome of the war. And that will conclude my presentation. Thank you.